Welcome to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions, the podcast where we dive deep into impactful and inspiring conversations with amazing professionals who've turned their challenges into stepping stones for success. I'm Johanna, your host, and each time we meet, we'll explore the stories and journeys of remarkable individuals who are PAs, doctors, professionals, mothers, and mission-driven changemakers, from the halls of the hospitals to the hearts of our homes, and into the communities we serve. Join us as we uncover the challenges, triumphs, and everything in between, and see life through each other's perspective. If you're seeking fulfillment in your career and life, I've got something special for you too. Download our free guide on how to be a fulfilled provider. It's packed with tips and insights to help you thrive while balancing the many hats you wear. And for all those parents out there dreaming big while raising little ones, check out Little Evie's Big Dreams children's book series, available now on Amazon. These heartwarming stories inspire kids to chase their own dreams, just like you're chasing yours. So grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and get ready for uplifting conversations that will leave you inspired and equipped to make a greater impact. Let's jump in. Hi, friends. Thank you so much for coming back to listen to the Medicine, Motherhood Missions podcast, a podcast about purpose, resilience, and deep transformation that happens when women lead from within. In today's episode, I'm joined by transformational leadership coach Kayla Burch. She's also the creator of the Trigger Response Method, author of Beyond Illusion, and a mentor to leaders ready to expand their emotional capacity, break subconscious patterns, and step into true personal power. From battling chronic illness to building a business rooted in deep identity work, Kayla shares how we can stop overfunctioning, dissolve cycles of stress and scarcity, and finally lead with ease, alignment, and an unshakable trust in ourselves. If you've ever felt like success still felt heavy, or like burnout was just part of the job, this conversation will help you shift everything. So let's dive in. Thank you so much, Kayla, for joining me on the podcast today. I'm excited. We've got a lot to discuss and go over. I've got so many questions for you, so I hope we can get everything in this hour.
Oh, I'm so excited for it. I can't wait to get to all of it.
Yeah. So, thinking about your origin story, what triggered your shift, literally and figuratively, from a health coach to the creator of this new trigger response method and being a mindset leader? You've said that it's never about doing more, but rewiring your subconscious. What was your breaking point that shifted you from hustle to healing? True healing, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Such a really layered question. And
Yes.
So I'll give it a very layered response as well, because there's so much to it. The breaking point itself is always a decision point. And so what's interesting about our decision points is we think that it's the one moment that we make that decision, but what it is, it's the moments over and over and over leading up to that threshold, that moment where it's like, I'm actually going to make a different decision than the one that I've made, that's the power. And so we make this decision all the time. And it's like, we make this choice to keep living the same life and then living the same life. And we think that we want something different and we think that we're making changes, but we're still attached to something. We're still attached to an outcome that we're living and an experience that we're living. And so for me personally, fast forward before I became a health coach, I dealt with this in my own chronic illness. I was very, very sick. I was in a wheelchair. I was having multiple seizures a day. And I got to this point where I didn't want to live anymore. I felt like a burden. I was very young. I was like 21, maybe 20, 21. I was 19, 20, and 21 during my illness. Wow. And so I got to this point where I was like, I'm a burden, to everyone around me. I just don't want to do this. So I had this massive decision point of well, what do I do? And in that moment, for me personally, I recognized I have choice. It was the first time I really came head to head with real choice of life. I could stay here on this earth type of choice. I can stay in this wheelchair and stay sick and identify with this illness, or I could choose something different than what I've chose before. So not to ruin the story, but I chose something different, right? I chose
Yes.
something different.
Thankfully, yeah.
And that was it. Exactly. And that's when I realized, oh, there's a lot of power. Now we don't just decide and then our world changes, but we decide and then we continue to make that same choice, and we continue to decide, and we continue to decide. And so that's what I noticed for myself. And that led me to health coaching. So I was like, I'm going to make everyone so healthy. And then I'm like, wait, none of these people are making the choices that they say they want to make. They're staying stuck in their patterns. And then I was like, that's what I did. And then I started to really be aware, and I started to do a lot of research, and I started to, talk to a lot of different people and bring a lot of different people into my program specifically around this. And I'm like, why do you say you want something so bad, but you keep choosing something different? And I'm like, it's all about the choice. And so my big pivot was within all of that, the research, the due diligence, the experience, right? Really diving into it, of recognizing the pattern that no matter what somebody said, if they were still stuck in a belief or they were held down to a certain outcome, whether they knew it or not, they were going to keep repeating that. So I thought, okay, well, I have to bring this into my health coaching. So I brought it into my health coaching, and then I did that for a while. And then I was like, no, this is it. This is the name of the game. This is where I thrive. This is where it is. And then it turned into this full-on modality that I just repeated no matter what someone was dealing with, whether that was their illness, whether that was, their own personal inner battles, the relationships, their leadership at work. It didn't matter. We were talking about the same things and the same processes.
Yeah. And so, okay, yeah, you gave me a great layered answer. And then you talked about this chronic illness, and making that decision, that pivotal decision in that point in your life, to keep making the right decisions. And the decision is basically to keep pressing forward, and also keep, making the right choices. But what was that initial ideology that, that moment that shifted that understanding to keep making those different decisions?
Yeah. And I think that the key thing right here that you just mentioned is that, you said that I made the right choice, and that I was doing the right things. And that was the actual awareness, is that there is no right or wrong choices. There's only choices. And in that moment, every choice I made was, we'll say, technically right. Like when I was sick, when I was like, anytime you make a choice, no matter where you're at, it's the right choice because it's from the level of awareness that and it's feeding into the thoughts and the beliefs and the stories that you tell yourself. So every choice you make to start something and then stop it, that's the right choice, because guess what that does? That feeds an identity, it feeds a story, and it feeds a belief. So it's actually the right choice. So the decision comes with making something else right, making something else different, making something else in that way. So for me, I had to realize that my next choice, my different choice that I was going to make, had to be a supportive choice for the outcome that I wanted. And oftentimes we get stuck in making choices that support an outcome that we don't want. So instead of them being right and wrong choices, they're supportive choices. And they're always either a supportive choice for what we don't want or a supportive choice for what we do want. And we have to be really clear on what it is that we do want. And that is one way to break through in that specific pattern. That's what I had to do. That's what the awareness I had to have.
Does that also go back to shifting your identity away from sickness? That also was, enabled you to change that trajectory of thinking?
Absolutely. And it's, we have these identities. So for me, I was so wrapped up in my identity. People had to care for me, and I didn't want that. It's not that I loved that people were caring for me. It's that all I focused on was how much I hated it and how much I didn't want it. But I didn't do anything other than focus on how much I wished it was different. And so then that's what my identity was. It was this woe is me. I was the victim to my circumstances and all these different things. So I just kept playing that out in my life over and over and over, instead of really focusing on what I do want. Yeah, of course I said I wanted to be well, but even more than that, I thought about not being well. Right. And so that is the key difference. Our brain has so much power on the trajectory of how we move and what we do and what we create in our reality. And so when I started focusing on actually being well, that's when my life started to change, because my identity shifted. I wasn't identifying with someone who was stuck or someone that was sick or someone that didn't want to be in the life that they were in. I started to identify with someone who was living the life that she wanted. And then over time, that's what I created.
So tell me, does it, how does it differ from the toxic positivity that we can kind of get into?
Mhm.
Because, I know I wasn't the one facing illness, but my husband also went through cancer, 3 years of sickness. And so as a family, we also kind of felt that stuck in that circumstance and illness. But we had this
Mhm.
something else aside from the sickness that we held on to, which was our faith, which helped us kind of motivate us out of those circumstances
Mhm.
and keep moving forward, keep looking up, keep, have positive attitude. But we tried not to have the toxic positivity that I think people can
Yeah.
get stuck into. What is that difference in the toxic positivity versus what you're saying is changing your identity and outlook and way of thinking?
Yeah. So when I think about toxic positivity, I think about we completely bypass how we actually feel. Right.
Mhm.
So we completely bypass like that, we're upset or that we have had something traumatic happen to us or that we are triggered or that we have a very specific emotion and we pretend that it's not there. So if you're angry, you pretend you're not angry because, oh, look, let's find the silver lining. That's not what this is. You
Mhm.
can look towards your future and be really upset with where you're at. You could very much wish it's not your preference that you're sick, right?
Yeah.
Or that your loved one's sick. That can very much still be true, but you still
Mhm.
look towards the future and an outcome that you do want. So you don't just focus on, oh, I don't want this to be happening. It's like, but I do want this to be happening. This sucks. It sucks that this is happening. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. It's not my preference. But who am I to fight what is happening? All
Yeah.
I can do is focus on creating what I do want.
Mhm.
And so it's just a bit of a different energy and texture to it. Bypassing, right? Spiritual bypassing toxic positivity completely omits that side. It's like we're love and we're light all the time and everything's great as the world's crashing around us. Like, oh, the world's crashing around us. That sucks. But what can I control? Where can
Yeah.
I put my focus? What can I do within this disruption? That's kind of
Yeah.
how those two different things is we don't ignore that part of it. We actually use
Mhm.
it to leverage and to understand ourselves and understand what we want. And then it's also motivating. Like if you don't
Mhm.
want to be somewhere, you can leverage off of that so you can understand where you do want to be. Right? So we don't suppress it, right? And or
Yeah.
ignore it or completely bypass it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's acknowledging what's going on in the circumstances, because then you can find solutions to those circumstances. If you're not acknowledging what's going on in your life, how are you going to change, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so how does that like go into the trigger response method? How does, what is it basically, first of
Yeah.
all? And
Yeah.
how does it help people move from that, survival mode to
Mhm.
actually changing or expanding?
Yeah. And so, one big thing about the trigger response, well, it's 5 steps. So, I'll just break down the steps and then I'll kind of tell you the ins and outs of it. So, the first step is your trigger. What
Mhm.
actually what's happening, right? What is the external reaction that's causing an internal response, a reaction within you? And so that's step one is understanding what that is. And you have to get really clear on that because it can mean different things in different situations. So, what
Mhm.
exactly in the external world created an internal response within me? That's your trigger. And then two, we go into understanding like, what do I make that mean about me? What am I making it mean? What's the story that's attached to it? What's the emotion that's attached to it? What is the belief that's attached to it? What kind of identity do I have wrapped up into it? There's so many different nuances. So step two is we're really questioning and asking, like getting a better understanding of what do I
Mhm.
make it now mean about me? I'm triggered. I make it mean something about me. My husband doesn't take out the trash. I make it mean that he doesn't love me, something like that,
Mhm.
right? So we'll do something simple like that.
Uh-huh.
I make it mean that he doesn't love me and that I have to do everything around here because nobody respects me and nobody does the things that I ask. Right. Wow. That's really big. That's a
Yeah.
really big story that's deeply rooted
Stretch.
within
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Exactly. But we do it. That it's
Yeah.
one of the most, I use that
Yeah.
example all the time because it's one of the most common ones.
Right.
Kids don't pick up their socks and it means that, they have no respect for you as a mother, things like that. And so what do we make it mean about us? And the third one is a payoff. And so the payoff is what gets overlooked a lot in this development, like personal development, spiritual development space, because people don't like it because it requires you to take a lot of personal radical responsibility. So when we think about the payoff, you're always getting an emotional return on something. And so, for example, if I act like the martyr in my house, I act like I'm the victim and I have to do everything in return, then I get a sense of, then even though it feels like I'm suppressing myself, I actually get a sense, I get a hit of that, like, oh, I'm the one that has to do everything. And so then I'm getting a level of safety, I'm getting a level of security that makes me feel good because now I'm relating to an identity that I have. And so there's always going to be a payoff. And the payoff is very much related to a sense of safety. I break this down in my book, The Expansion Code. I have an entire chapter on just the different types of payoffs that people have and the different identities that we attach to it. So we understand what we gain from that. It keeps us safe. It keeps us visible. It keeps us from being completely open with the person. It keeps us from we don't speak up. And then we just complain to ourselves, but we never tell the person, right? There's all kinds of payoffs. But the real meat of the trigger response method comes after we know that and we understand that. We get to this step 4, which is your choice point. And that's when you choose something different over and over and over, because we hit this choice point a lot. And this is why it's not spiritual bypassing, right? Because you hit it over and over and over and over, and you have to make a choice over and over and over to do something differently. I have to choose not to believe that this is a personal attack on me. Right? I have to choose to believe that not everything is about me. I have to choose to believe that this person isn't disrespecting me. And then I have to choose a different response, a different belief system, a different pattern afterwards. So it's a very simplistic type of example. But then you make this choice and you make this choice, and all of a sudden you're at step 5 and you didn't even realize it because you made the choice so many times. And now the trigger happens and now your response is different and you didn't have to make a choice. It was just a new pattern. So you do that over and over and over. You do that when you pick up the phone with a parent that, really triggers you, or a situation with a coworker or a spouse. And then we've now completed a cycle of the TRM.
Yeah. It's behavioral modification in a way, right? That's what we're trying to do, habit changes, which ultimately changes character and the way we react, the way we live. So your trigger response method is pretty cool. It's kind of a different methodology for behavior modification.
Yeah.
And changing those habits and behaviors of people that are long-standing or chronic.
It's very simplified. And that's the thing, the world is always our mirror. You can't go anywhere. You can't even leave your driveway without being triggered half the time. Someone flew by this, the stop sign too fast, or they did a rolling stop, and you've got kids out running on this street, right? You're always triggered by something. So the world is always telling us where we need to look at our emotional control, always. And so that's why this method, it was the reason why I created it. I didn't just sit down and, say, oh, what are these 5 steps? I evaluated my client who made changes in what we did. And I thought these were the things that we had to do over and over. This is what I had to do. This was my own behavior modification. And I had to hit it over and over and over. And I did that in the world. And so it was so simplified. You don't have to go to a certain setting to be able to work through this, to be able to go through hypnosis, to be able to come out the other side. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not practical. It's not practical in your everyday life. Yeah. Right? When we learn this tool to actually butt up against our resistance and our trigger and our emotions and our feelings, and we get emotionally stable to learn how to move through it in the moment, we can rapidly change things because we're just not waiting for something else or someone else to guide us. We're just doing it ourselves.
Yeah. It goes back to not ignoring the problem, not ignoring what triggers you, and dealing with the issues that are arising and actually acknowledging them so that you can make the accurate and appropriate changes. Yeah. And so that's really amazing how you kind of, learned, from such a very difficult situation that you were in already, and that you were able to identify and just make those decision points over and over again and create this whole entire system and be a internationally recognized speaker and coach, and so many accomplishments that you've gone through and overcome since then. It's amazing what you have accomplished.
Thank you.
And going into that, thinking about that mindset, I know we've talked about those behavioral modification and trigger response method, but what is the difference between changing your mindset and doing true identity level work?
Yeah. So, when we think about our mindset, it's just kind of like our mindset's our thoughts. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
where do our thoughts go? And thoughts are crazy. I mean, if have you ever
Mm-hmm.
just sat with your thoughts? Sometimes you think stuff and you're like, where did that even come? What did that come from? Right.
Yeah.
And then we make it a paradigm or we think that there's something wrong with us. But when I think about identity, I think about belief systems. I think about
Mm-hmm.
what we truly, honestly believe. Because you can have a mindset of, oh, I'm a go-getter. Yeah, I accomplished. I'm going to do this. I can have all the mantras that I want that I'm going to follow through. But if I
Mm-hmm.
actually have a deep-seated belief that I'm not somebody who's capable, or I'm not someone who's can accomplish, or I'm not someone who's deserving, or I'm not someone who's going to be this, that's my actual identity. And it does not matter what my mindset tells me. It does not matter how many times I wrote that on my mirror. I'm simply not going to do it because my belief and my identity does not back it. So that's the difference. So if we think about like the mindset's just like the more like the controlled thoughts, I'm going to tell myself this over and over and over. Yeah, that's fun. It does nothing. It does nothing
Mm-hmm.
until you change what you actually believe and how you experience yourself and what you identify with.
Yeah. And so I know you were talking about the trigger response method, but so with the conditioning, the life experiments, and self reaffirming loops of beliefs, how is it just using the trigger response method to dissolve those old patterns?
Yeah. So a lot of it has to come for the TRM to be incredibly effective. You need to be really aware of where these things came from, right? Where the
Mm-hmm.
conditioning came from. And so then you can start to detach from that conditioning. You detach from the meaning behind it. That's what the meaning is about. So
Mm-hmm.
you get really clear of what you make this mean. So for example, growing up, I thought I was just so stupid. Like I thought I was not smart. And then I believed that at a very young age. And not necessarily because anyone told me that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yes, people told me I was dumb, but right, like not, but that didn't really
Mm-hmm.
it's not where it came from. It came from me. And so then I validated that, in third grade when everybody, I always use this example. Third grade's when when you used to learn your multiplication table. And so everyone was, after I got past the zeros and the ones and the twos, it got a little more difficult for me to remember. Turns out I'm probably dyslexic. All of my children are dyslexic. And I was like, oh, fun times, as I homeschooled them, as I'm trying to teach them. And
Yeah.
I'm very smart. And I'm like, oh, phonetically, this is really difficult for me. I'm probably been dyslexic my entire life, but whole nother side.
Mm-hmm.
But so what had happened was everybody else's on this board, everybody else's ice cream sundaes, once they got past a certain, I remember this so vividly, and I don't remember a lot about my childhood, but I remember this very vividly because it's what I think it was one of the points where I validated and I confirmed my beliefs in my external reality that I was stupid. And so I watched everybody else get these ice cream like toppings on their sundae. And I got stuck I was just basically the basics, the basics that you could have for a banana split. Actually, it was a banana split. And I didn't even like bananas. And that's probably why it stuck with me. It's like, I mainly only got bananas and I don't even like bananas.
Yeah.
And I'm watching all these people get all the way up to the cherry on top. And I'm like, and I'm stupid. So I validated this in my external world. And so my conditioning, after I truly built that belief and that paradigm about myself, then I confirmed it everywhere I could look, in my schoolwork, in my relationships, in my conversations, anywhere I could validate that I was not smart, I did. And I held myself back and I created this entire paradigm about myself.
Mm-hmm.
So if I didn't understand that it was an actual belief and paradigm system that I built for myself, I couldn't have dismantled it. Right? Until you understand that it is a belief system that you have, you will continue to live that out in those patterns. So through this method, through the choice part of this, that's how I chose something different. That's why I've authored 2 books. That's why I've led an international program. That's why I've worked and I've created for the absolute best people in the industry as I'm rising to that as for myself, right? That didn't come from just me saying you're smart enough. No.
Mm-hmm.
Because that never worked. Anytime I said you're smart enough, I thought, well, let me prove to you all the reasons why that's not true. And so it really does come down to understanding the conditioning behind it, not even conditioning from other people. People think of conditioning, they think that you were conditioned from somebody else, which can obviously happen. But most of the time, our conditioning comes from our own thought patterns and
Mm-hmm.
our own beliefs that were influenced from the outside external forces that we then confirmed and validated in the external. And so until we understand that, we just keep repeating those patterns.
That's really, really so true, because we all create our own belief systems all the time. And it's kind of goes back to even your examples with relationships or different interactions. Those little things can be so misunderstood just because of the way our belief system is. Um, you were saying you thought you were stupid. Some people may feel they are not loved or not, and then they kind of force that belief system on their relationships, right? So that's really interesting in how you're also saying, of course, the mindset is just the way your thoughts are, and it can lead to those belief systems, which ultimately become our identities, right? And then unless we change who and what we're identifying with and why, then it's hard for us. If we can't, re-identify ourselves, it's harder to change that ultimate belief system, the mindset, the behavior, the action, the character, the whole way of life, right?
Exactly. Because most people will just stop there. Most people will just stop at the mantras. And so those are important, right? We do need to utilize the mind to change the belief. Like that's how we guide the different pattern. That's how we guide it. Most people will just stop and they're like, I'm so good and I'm so smart. And that doesn't change anything. There's not a high level of radical responsibility. There's not a high level of honesty because you're not really getting to the root of why you don't feel smart and what's true about that and what's different about that. So for example, if I go back to like me not being smart enough, I'm still not that good at math. Like that's still a thing. I still struggle sometimes with spelling, but I wrote 2 books.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not a limitation for me anymore.
Yeah.
It's not something that holds me back, the difference of it. So it's not like we're sugarcoating it. It's like there are still a lot of things that like I am not skilled at, but there's a lot of things that I am, and that's what I lean into. So it doesn't mean that I'm dumb. It means that I can't do math. Like that's it. I didn't go into that profession for a reason, Yeah. And so I didn't do that. And so it's also just like, okay, how do we utilize this and how do we stop making it an identity that we can't do anything because this is not a strength of ours.
Exactly. That's the word that I was coming to myself when you said that is we're focusing on weaknesses rather than strengths. And then we think our weakness is our identity rather than our strength, or we don't even know what our strengths are. And then thereby we just think we're just weak because we're just focusing on everything wrong that we can't do. But not everyone can do everything anyways.
Yeah.
And so everyone has unique strengths and unique gifts, talents that they are able to thrive on. And even if, as you say, you may not be a mathematician professor, but you don't need to be because that's not your goal in life. And you can always get a calculator.
Exactly, right? I've got the skills I need for the life I have, and that's all that matters. I didn't try to create. And that's the thing too. People will try to create lives that really aren't meant for them because of expectation or what they think they're supposed to do. And then they just put themselves in these boxes and it's miserable. Like if I really was like, I'm supposed to be a mathematician, man, I would really feel bad about myself.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I couldn't do it, but it wasn't a natural skill I had. So it would have taken me a lot longer and I would have missed a lot of opportunity that I had to actually just lean into my natural innate gifts because I was wishing I was something else instead of being like, well, that's not it. That's not it at all. What is it? What is present? What is here within myself that I can lean into?
But do you find that some people are feeling like failures, are feeling such weakness and defeat and that loops of beliefs that are just negative because they're pursuing something that they were told they were supposed to do instead of what they really want to do?
Yeah, I think so. I think that that's very, very, very common in the clients that I have, because I work with a lot of high level clients, and they get to this point where they've built a life that wasn't theirs. They built a life off of expectation from their parents, or just expectations of what they thought was going to make them feel good and fulfilled. And they're like, now what do I do with it? And so they built it off of, or they weren't skilled at it, but then they forced themselves, and, or maybe they, gained the skill and they're like, oh, it's okay. But it just wasn't, they weren't passionate about it. And so then they feel like failures, because it's like, okay, but I'm still doing it and I'm not happy, or I'm not successful, or I'm struggling with it. And it had nothing to do with what they really want, like what they wanted to build in their life, or even what they were naturally skilled at. Now, with that being said, everyone can develop a skill. I truly believe that to a certain extent. Like if you want to get better at basketball, you can go get better at basketball. You may not ever play in the NBA, right? But you can develop a skill, and you can even do it very well. And so we also have to remember that as well. There are different innate natural skills that we have.
Yeah, that's very true, because the more you practice on something, the more you can develop and better your skills.
Yeah.
But so going back to that point about the successful people, because is it burnout, or is it the pursuit of something that they're not passionate about?
I think that there's a level of like, it's so person specific. If you really break it down, like burnout's really only going to come if you're not super passionate about it. If you're really energetic and you're really outcome based and you're really purpose based, then you can do a lot. You can do a whole lot. It's like having kids. They're exhausting. I have 4 children. I homeschooled my 4 children for a long time. They are exhausting,
Yeah.
but there have been times maybe where I was really tired and I would lose focus of what I wanted, but really my energy comes from when I want to be present with my children, because I want to be present with my children. I'm passionate about being a mother.
Yeah.
And so that's a beautiful thing to like recognize, that it doesn't mean I'm just always like this bubbly person, but I can always bring myself back to the outcome that I want for my kids. And that gives me energy. All right. So even if I'm just kind of like dragging, I'm still energetic in it. I don't want to just burn it down. It's like, okay, I have an outcome. I have a passion for this. And the same things with the job. I do a lot. I have a lot of different projects. I'm building a lot of really big international things right now, working with some really big names in the industry. And it requires a lot of my time, and a lot of my resources, but I am passionate about it. Right. And so when you're working on something that you don't have that passion or that belief in or that outcome in, it burns fast. You burn through your resources and your reserves really quickly. But that doesn't mean that you can't realign with that. It doesn't mean that you're in the wrong spot either. It just means that you need to get more purpose based. You need to get more outcome based, and you need to start, that needs to be your target. And then if you can't figure that out within the profession that you're in, then that's time to evaluate, but where is it then? Because you deserve to live a fulfilled life. So it doesn't mean you have to burn it down, go do something else if you're currently burnt out or feeling that. It's saying, how do I find the passion and the purpose and the outcome here? And how do I realign and recenter with that?
Is it also so discussing those types of burnout or passion, purpose, even thought life? Are they also like having invisible scripts running their life, needing to be rewired?
Yeah, a lot of it, especially if you're feeling really stuck, it's like a belief, like you said, an invisible script saying you have to be here. Like if you weren't doing this, then who would you be? What would you be left with? Right. So there's a lot of identity that gets tied up into that, of why we keep doing the same things over and over, and why people don't break patterns, or not even just internal patterns, but just external, like going to the same job that they absolutely hate because they don't believe that they could have anything else.
Because that
right. So
could
there's a
even be
lot of that with them.
because that could even be for a successful person, like in medicine we see a lot of burnout, but they're saving lives, they're helping people, they've reached the physician standard or PA or whatever, and they're still having that, but they're maybe having that invisible script of, this is what I am, this is what I do, this is what I'm supposed to do, this is the right thing to do, it's the good thing to do, but is it really? Right. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. And in that outcome, if you think about it, like, I didn't go to medical school, but, I've done things like when you got really excited and I know people who have, and man, that zest for medicine is like on fire when you're in med school and then you're starting your residency and you're doing all this. I mean, you think that you're going to change the world and then you get into it for a couple of years and it's like, ugh, there's not much I can change here. Right? Because you lose the passion, you lose the outcome, you lose the vision. And so what used to be the world is your oyster now becomes I am micromanaged by a massive organization ran by a even bigger massive organization, even ran by an even bigger massive organization. And we can go on forever and ever when it comes to medicine. And I don't have much control. I'm down here at the bottom, even though I thought this was the top. So in those circumstances, you have to realign with the outcome because, as a doctor, as a PA, as a nurse, as a anything, you are still showing up every day and you're still helping those that you come into contact. You are a ripple effect into that world and you lose sight of that because it wasn't what you thought it was. So that's something that you can really easily realign with yourself and not try to control everything that you can't control, which is the medical system, right?
yeah.
But you can control what you can control within that and you can still be that guiding light. So if you readjust your outcome and you readjust your focus and you focus on what you do get to do and what you do bring to the world versus what you can't do or where you think your restrictions are, then that completely changes that texture as well. And it brings that vibrancy back. It brings that excitement back. It brings that mission driven purpose back that we somehow lose a couple of years into our profession. I did the same thing with coaching. I lost my mission and my purpose. And it was just like, ugh, God, this is just something I'm good at. I could do a call. I could do a call in my sleep. I could do a call and do 15 other things, and it was just like, it's just what I'm good at. It's just a skill I have. And then I lost my purpose and my mission for it and it didn't become exciting. And every call drained the crap out of me. And then I pulled back and then all these different things until I realigned with that purpose and that burnout. And then I fed into the burnout and, it's just all this burnout and maybe it's not what I meant to do. It's like, no, you're just focusing on the things that are uncomfortable. Focus on the outcome. You forgot about the client, right? You forget about the patient. You forget about the things that are important to you, right? Bring your focus back to that and build that passion and that fire within you.
Yeah. I think we find it hard to let go of control, especially if you're a type A personality and things like that, because you're working with successful individuals or leaders in different professions. How do you teach them to let go of control and
Yeah.
rewire themselves to focus or refocus or realign? Because I know you said a bunch of things regarding that, but sometimes it's hard to really take that in and allow ourselves to realign.
Yeah. I think that one of the first things that I would say that most people hate, especially my type A clients, it's that you're not controlling anything. Like no matter what you think you're controlling, you're not. There's no external control that you have. It's a perceived sense of control. It's a perceived sense of safety. And as soon as you come to that realization of realizing you're not controlling anything in the external world, like you have zero control over what happens outside of you, and you realize the only thing I can control is myself. I can control my focus. I can control my direction. I can control my choices. I can control my actions. I can't control my thoughts because they're free game. They'll do whatever, but I can control what I choose to believe, right? Like that's where it is. And you stop saying, how do I control this person or this situation or this entire, platform? When you stop focusing on that, you actually get to bring it back to what you can control. And there's a lot more influence that happens. So when you realize it's not control that you're after, it's influence, you can actually start to be the influential source that you're wanting. Nothing works by control because we have zero control. We can't control the stock market. We can't control the housing industry. We can't control any of those. We cannot control the medical system, right? We cannot control it, but we can have influence on these things in our own way. And so when we bring that back to our sense of control, which is what we do here, what we think, what we believe, our actions, then we can have the influence that we're looking on. So it's really that release of that identity in this false belief that you can control anything is the most powerful thing that you can do.
Yeah. That's, I love that, how you framed that. That makes so much more sense. And how, of course, we can't control anything. Nothing is in our control in life in general. Even our health isn't, even no matter how healthy you are. If you have a genetic predisposition for heart disease, you never know,
Yeah.
and so
Mm-hmm.
no matter how, gym fit you are. And so um, that's so true. And I love the word influence, because I feel like everyone has a sphere of influence in their lives. But the key, I think it goes back to our identity and how we're changing our own behaviors in order to have that influence wherever we are, right? Because if we're not
Mm-hmm.
getting down to those root issues of where and what we're identifying with, then we can misidentify even with our in our positive circumstances or
Mm-hmm.
positive spheres, communities that we're in, right? And
Yeah.
get so attached to that, um, even if it's a positive thing versus, just the chronic illness or chronic difficulties or things that we're facing. But even the positive things that are happening in our life, we can attach ourselves to so much so that then it becomes maybe over functioning, or um, does it go overboard in that way? Do you find that your clients go through that?
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of times when we have a lot of that over functioning and over identifying with anything,
Mhm,
then it's driven by a lot of fear, because then it's driven by a lot of fear, like who am I without this?
mhm,
And if I wasn't doing this job that I'm so good at, that I always get these accolades, that I always, show up
mhm,
and I get praised for, what would I be left with without that? And we have to answer
mhm.
that question to actually be content with what we're doing. And so we can over identify with things that are like happiness. But then when, a loss comes in, or, a failure comes in, and we're not really equipped for it, we're not used to it. Now our entire identity is shredded because we based it so much on the success and the winning and the good feels, that it shatters what we are. So we over identify with that instead of just recognizing, hey, we win, we lose. That's it. That's all it is. That's all we can do. And so I have a lot of clients, when they first come to me, they're winners. Like, they're very high level achieving humans. They've just won a lot in life. And the funny thing about that is that it wasn't that they never lost. It's that they never identified with the losing, and they only identified with the winning. And so
Yeah,
then sometimes when that big loss comes on, it sideswipes them. And I have to remind them, I'm like, you've been a loser your whole life.
mhm.
Like, you've
Yeah,
lost your whole life. You just didn't choose to recognize it as a skill and a gift,
yeah.
which is what this is. So it's
Mhm.
recognizing that we win and we lose all the time. We don't have to overly identify with either one. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. It's just what's ever present and what happens
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, that's so true, because then they're not ready for that bad outcome or
Mm-hmm.
prepared. And um, going into that, so how do you help clients kind of regulate their nervous system, or like be able to face those difficulties when they do come?
Yeah. So a big part of it is the identity work, and it's understanding with the client specifically what they think about themselves and what they identify with it. So going on the example of like someone who's really successful, well, they put so much pressure and perfection on themselves because they're so scared of what they'll be left with if it's not present. So the way I work with that is I help my clients understand that accolade, that level of reward on the external world is not who you are. So it's really coming back down to understanding like who you are underneath it. And that's it. Like, it's what identity do you build about yourself? Because ultimately we all will face a massive change in our life. There will be a massive drop. There will be something that shifts. And if we are overly identified with an external source, we will be setting ourselves up for disappointment. It's inevitable. And so it's recognizing that it comes back to you, and that your true sense of identity can never be like changed. Like, you can't just change it just because something gets taken away, just because you get fired or your project doesn't get picked to be the one that, moves through. And so it's really working with what sets and beliefs that you have to have about yourself to make your world right. Because when you have a set and condition on your world that it has to go this way or you're not happy, oh, you're just wait for that shoe to drop, because it will. It's recognizing that there's no set and condition to be happy, we're satisfied, we're content with who we are, and we're going to continue to show up in our life. And then what happens is we do win, right? We do get pushed forward. We do have those things, and we don't get set back as much when the setbacks inevitably happen. So that's the work that I do with my clients, is to actually help them understand that and help them understand the conditioned stories that they have that keep them operating at that level, that keep them afraid to fail. Right? Because when you're afraid to fail, man, you typically are going to hit really hard because you're going to set yourself up in that way. Or the tiniest little failure is going to be the thing that sets you off because you're just not prepared for it. You don't know what to do, and you're overly identified with the success.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all age. And so things definitely do change over time. And unless we know and can identify those true purposes that give us passion and meaning in life, we will find it hard over time too, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, yeah. What about just the talk about true personal power versus performative leadership? I think you've mentioned things like that as well.
Yeah, so performative is one of my favorite words, because we don't even realize how much we show up in like a performance of like who we think we're supposed to be, or in what we think other people expect of us. So we show up in this level of performance of, I'm going to show up as somebody who is a good leader instead of just being a good leader.
Right.
So we try to adapt these qualities that we think make a good leader instead of using our skills and our strength to show up in an embodied leader, because it's going to be different for every single person. And that's why there's a lot of incongruence in leadership, is because they're trying to mimic what they think is a leadership skill instead of understanding what your actual leadership skill is and how you lead and how you move people and motivate them. And so performative leadership is just a set check box of the things that I do. Think about the most corporate space you've ever been in, right? And the corporate things and the way that they tell you to be a leader, things like that. That's performative, right? You're not really those things in that way. So you're showing up in a performance and a facade to appear that you are, instead of just being a strong, freaking embodied leader from who you are. And it doesn't change.
And I think that's powerful to also note, because you can't put a box on who can be a leader and what personality type, what kind of characteristics or things like that too. Because I think there are many leaders out there who may not be the definition of what maybe certain standards, as you say, of the performative leadership, but they're excellent leaders in their spaces.
Yeah. And very effective and very efficient leaders, because they're doing it naturally and people are attracted to that. And then people are like, yes, I want to listen. Yes, I want to follow. Yes, I want to contribute. Yes, I want you to get the accolade based off of our team performance. I want that because I can see that you're leading from your true self. And that true self doesn't mean you're just like this open person. Like, you can be a little bit rougher too. It's not like this beautiful, like rainbows and unicorn type of leadership. Like there can be some really firm things, but if you're doing it from your heart, like I am the most challenging coach you will ever experience. And I believe that to my core. I say very harsh things in very direct ways, but my clients have never, ever felt unloved. They felt more loved because I was willing to do it, because that's the embodied leader that I am. If I stepped into a performative leadership in that, then there would be a lot of appeasing. There would be a lot of, oh, but you're trying, or, oh, you're this. And I'm like, whatever, you're not trying. You're literally not doing anything you said you were going to do. Like, stop it. Right. But that's when you do it from the heart and you do it from your natural self and you do it with love. And it doesn't mean you have to love everyone on your team, but you have a love and passion for an outcome. Then people will feel that. And so they'll want to follow, they'll want to lead, they'll want to contribute.
Yeah. And so just some final reflections, because I definitely want to hit on how you do it all, including homeschooling as a mother of 4. Can you tell us a
Well,
little bit about this? Because I think in our first session, you talked about it's not about having your hands full. It's about reevaluating how your mindset is for it. I can't remember exactly how you
yeah,
phrased it, but
yeah. I probably said it's probably changing your relationship with it. It's
okay.
changing their relationship with what all you have to do. And for one, I also leverage a lot of really great people and resources in my life. And so
Mhm.
now, as of this year, last year we had a part-time tutor where my kids went to the tutor 2 days a week for like 5 or 6 hours a day. And
Mhm.
this year, I am free from homeschooling, and my kids are going to a full time teacher and 5 days a week. So great. So I don't have to do that anymore. But while I was doing it,
Uh-huh.
I was just leveraging my time. My relationship with my schedule wasn't that of resentment. I didn't resent that I was having to do that. I didn't resent that I had to go here. I recognize that I have a lot of tasks and there's a lot of purpose in them. Very, very purpose driven. I want my kids to have the best outcome that they can. I want them to thrive in their way. I want that. That's an outcome I want. I live through that. So the heartaches, the challenge to be able to get their stuff done, that was still priority because of that. And the other side of that, with all my different work projects, with my clients, with my own personal coaching certification, and all these different things that I'm running, and these different things that I'm working with right now, and these different with these different big brands in the personal development industry.
Mhm.
It's a lot. Like, I'm running a lot, lead on a lot of different things. And instead of being like, oh my God, I have so much to do. Look at all the stuff I have to do. I think, look at all the stuff I have to do. What do I need to get done? Right? Like, what is it that needs to be done today? What
Mhm.
absolutely must get done? And
Mhm.
how does it feed the outcome of my most fulfilled life? Because this
Mhm.
is everything I ever wanted. This is everything I ever asked for. This is all the things that I wanted. I'm living my dream life right now. So what do I need to do to make it happen? And how do I always align with that, with where I am at right now and where I want to be in my future? And if there's days where I can't get stuff done because, maybe I'm not feeling good, or when my kids aren't, that stuff gets there the next day. I don't stress about it. I don't make things harder than it needs to be. That's the main thing. If I was to sum it up for one thing, I'd say I don't make things harder than they need to be. And I don't create stories around my schedule that are untrue.
Yeah. So, Kayla, thank you again. And I think the key thing that you were talking about earlier, speaking as a busy mom, homeschooling, but now you're going back, taking the kids into full time school, but speaking to those mindset leadership principles of that you're able to transition to even your family life. And I think
Mm-hmm.
every one of us has a purpose and a mission and a goal and dream. If we really want to pursue those, we will. And I think that's the key that you've talked about throughout this episode. And I'm really glad to have spoken with you this conversation. And thank you so much for joining me today. And I know that this conversation is going to be a powerful conversation that a lot of people are going to walk away encouraged, expanded. And thank you so much for joining us today on Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions. I appreciate the time and conversation with Kayla Burch. I hope you walk away encouraged, expanded, and ready to lead yourself and others from a place of deeper peace and purpose. This conversation has been a good discussion about talking about what your identity is and not just changing a mindset, but really working on those underlying belief systems. And as Kayla is a busy mom of four, she showed us that despite having so much on her plate, it's not about thinking it's a lot on her plate. It's about thinking about her passions, her desires, and what she wants to accomplish with her life and for her children and her family. And when you have a passion, when you have a purpose, when you have a mission that is fully passion driven, you'll find a way to make things work for the best of your family and the people you work with and all those around you. You don't have to hustle harder to grow. You just need to rewire the way you think, lead, and live. Until next time, keep showing up with courage, keep healing at the root, and above all, keep sparking hope. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Medicine Motherhood Missions. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a sense of connection in the stories we shared today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram for updates, free downloads, and to join a community of like-minded individuals passionate about making a difference through medicine, motherhood, and mission work. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Until next time, keep sparking hope, keep healing, keep nurturing, and keep making a difference. This is Johanna signing off from Medicine Motherhood Missions. The medical opinions expressed on this podcast are for the informational purposes only and should not be considered as medical advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare provider for personal medical questions or concerns. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast host.